Well, good morning and welcome back to the channel. Well, today is the first day that we've seen the sun pretty much all week. So I thought today was a perfect day to give you an update on how I've been going along with the EcoFlow Stream Ultra that's connected to my fence mounted solar panels. Now I should say at this point, this is not a sponsored video. EcoFlow did provide the Stream Ultra 3 months ago for my sort of long-term review, but they have not seen this video. They have not asked me to say anything. Everything you're going to hear in this video are my own thoughts. Now, what are we going to cover today? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a quick update on the setup of the system. So if you're new to the channel, you don't need to rush back and watch lots of old videos. But then we're going to dig into exactly what it's generated over the last 3 months, how we could have generated more energy with it if we'd have orientated the panels in a more conventional way than hanging them directly on our fences. And then finally, I'll tell you what I like about the system and what I don't like about the system. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then stick around because we're going to get into it. So let me start by giving you a quick overview of the system. So behind me, you'll see there are four 440 watt panels that are mounted directly on my fence. Now, one of the questions I get a lot is, what kind of mounting system did you use? Now, there's actually multiple different mounting systems here. Two of them, the two you can see here, are just simple hook systems. They are hooks that directly attach to the panel and then hook over the back of the fence. They're also secured down at the bottom, so should the wind get underneath them during the winter, that they don't fly up and act like sails. Then the systems over here, which you can see have the brackets on the bottom, these are an older mounting system that EcoFlow put out a couple of years ago with their first balcony mounted solar system called the Power Stream. These I don't believe are available anymore, but they are just simple brackets that connect to the back of the panel and then the same kind of hook mechanism that goes directly onto the fence. Now, the only difference between the two is, obviously these weigh a lot more because there's a lot more metal involved, but they do exactly the same thing. So if you are looking to mount them on fences, I highly recommend the hook system. I will put a link to the official EcoFlow brackets that are available today down in the description below. Now, we also have another two panels which are over there behind me. Now, those ones over there are designed to catch the evening sun. So they're looking directly west. Those ones behind me, they will catch the morning sun. Then as the sun tracks around the sky, the ones on the other side of the garden will pick up the evening sun. Now, all of those then run through cables that run along my fence, which you can see here, and I still haven't got round to tidying these up, but they run down to the side of my office where they come into the office and they connect to the Stream Ultra. So let's head inside and I'll show you how that's all hooked up. So here is the system. On the wall at the back there, you can see two waterproof junction boxes. Those bring the cables from the solar panels inside. They're connected via MC4s into the back of the Stream Ultra. Now, on the surface, these two devices look exactly the same. The Stream Ultra has the MPPTs built into it. It also has the inverter and the connection to the main system. And we're going to talk about how you hook that up a little bit later. This is the AC Pro. This is an add-on battery. This is connected via a single cable to the Stream Ultra. Again, we'll go through more of that setup a little bit later. But it's really simple. These two devices just sit here under the bench all day long doing their thing. Okay, so I've turned the system around so you can actually see where everything connects on the back. And it's quite a simple system. If you're thinking EcoFlow, you're probably thinking power station. And this really isn't a power station because it doesn't have anywhere near the level of connectivity that you would get on something like a Delta 3. This is a home battery system. So therefore, it has everything you need to hook it up to your home and nothing else. It keeps it really simple. So what you can see along here is we have our 4 MPPTs. So as I say, this is the Ultra system. The Ultra system has 4. There are other devices which have less. I believe you can get one with 3 and one with 2 sets of MPPTs. But what I have here are the 4 panels that are connected to this device, each coming in on their own string. So each one is plugged into a separate MPPT. And then if I pull out my EcoFlow app, you can actually see what each individual panel is generating. Now, right now, we're not getting a lot of generation because the sun, as I say, is sitting right behind the trees, quite low in the sky. But that means that each individual panel, we can get data from how each one is performing. And in my case, if at certain times of the year, certain panels aren't producing, we can then move those panels and put them onto different parts of the fence. Then at the top of the unit, we have two cables. So this is our parallel cable. This runs to the second battery. So to add another battery to the system, to increase its capacity, you literally plug one cable from one battery to the other, and there is another port on the other side of the AC Pro. So if I wanted to plug another battery in, I would do that. And then this cable here is the actual connections to the main supply. Now it is a little difficult to see. Let me move the camera so you can actually see it here. This plugs into this fused spur. Now, to comply with UK electrical regulations, you must connect this to a fused spur. This goes off to my consumer unit, which is in the corner over here. I'm not going to pull everything out to get to that, but this is sitting on its own separate line into the consumer unit and is able to supply power through this cable, through the fused spur, and into that there. Now, in the rest of Europe, you can plug this into a standard European plug socket. But in the UK, our UK electrical regulations do not allow you to feed power back through this socket. Now, can you do that? Absolutely you can. In fact, my power stream system was in the garage, ran like that for nearly 2 years without any issues whatsoever. And I know from going on to the EcoFlow groups on Reddit that the vast majority of people are just running it through the power socket. But just to be clear, it is not compliant with UK electrical regulations, even if it works. And then the last thing just to point out on here, you'll notice there is a 13 amp plug in there. It's a bit strained because I've turned this around, but there are two sockets on the back that allow you to plug things directly into the unit. So if you have power stored in your battery, then you can power any devices you want off of these standard UK 13 amp plug sockets. The reality of the situation is that you probably don't need to do this if you're feeding it back into your consumer unit. So what I'm actually doing here is taking power from the battery, which is stored as DC, I'm converting it into AC, it's coming out of this socket and it's going up onto my bench to feed power to my monitor and my computer above me. But the reality is, so we could do exactly the same by just plugging this into a standard 13 amp plug socket, because the power that's coming out of here is being taken out of the battery as DC, is being converted into AC, is being fed into my consumer unit, which then feeds the socket. So really, in a connected environment where you're connecting this into your main system, you probably don't need to use these sockets unless you have a very specific need for it. My recommendation is send it all through there. Therefore, you can monitor how much power is being used from one single point. So in my case, in my consumer unit, I have a Shelly EM50 that's monitoring this device so I can get a holistic view of all the power that's coming out of it. If I was to take power out of here, I'd have to monitor that separately and then account for the two, which is just extra work on my part. So that's it. It's a really simple device. There's nothing else you really need to know here. If I turn it back round again, there is an earth point here if you are using this in a standalone mode. So you are plugging this in and you're not connecting it to the mains. Maybe you are using the AC sockets here and you want to be able to earth it. You can earth these devices to an earth pin outside. And then if I turn it back round again, the only thing to really be aware of on the front, there is a power on off button if you do need to shut the system down. And the one thing I really like on the front here are these. So you can see here, this is showing it's flashing. It's actually charging right now. So we're getting some power from the solar panels. It's charging the battery, but the batteries are nearly full because we did grid charge them overnight. But it's just a really nice visual indication that when you sort of wander in, you can take a look and go, oh yeah, they're charging, or oh look, my battery's nearly flat. I should probably do something about that. So, quick replan. As the EcoFlow app doesn't play nicely with AirPlay, what I've done is I've gone through and taken some screenshots, and I'm going to walk you through some of the nice features about the app, some of the cool reporting that's already built in and readily accessible, and then we'll talk about a couple of things that I really don't like, other than the AirPlay not working. So the app itself presents itself really nicely, a sort of picture of a house, and there are 3 or 4 different variants you can choose to try and find one that looks like your house. None of them look like mine, so this was the one that I chose. But it gives you a real-time dashboard. You can see here when I took this screenshot, We had about 86% charge in the batteries. We were bringing in about 101 watts. And again, you can see the nice flow, and then when the batteries are discharging, you see it discharging to the home. When there's power coming in from the grid, you see it coming in from the grid. You also get some basic stats, so how much have you produced today from solar generation, how much have you consumed, and if you've put in your electricity rates, how much it's earned you today, whether that's energy that you've brought in at a lower price that you're then selling back to the grid, or energy that you've accumulated for free from solar. That will give you a running total there. Now, I mentioned earlier, you can look at the different MPPTs to see what each panel is producing, and that's what you can see on the second screen here. So I've clicked into the Ultra. It's showing me the state of charge of the battery, how long it will take at the current, whatever it was, 101 watts, or in fact, when I took this screenshot, it dropped to 85. So how long will it take to get to full state of charge? About another 2 hours. But as you can see there, for each MPPT, we get a rating in watts that tells us how much energy is coming in from those panels. Below that, we can see our grid connection. We're not exporting any energy from the system. So as I said, most of the energy that is put into these systems I use to supplement my base load. So this system accumulates energy from solar all day, and then in the evening when we're sitting down for dinner, it will push out a consistent 450 watts, which covers the base load of the house. And below that are some controls. If you want to use the built-in AC ports that I talked about a moment ago, you can turn those on and off just to make sure that if anyone is not supposed to be using them, so like children or anything, you can just tap on the screen, obviously on the app, not on the screen here, to turn those off. Then the last screen I want to show here is something that a lot of people I've spoken to who have one of these systems found really confusing, because there isn't an obvious setting that says charge my batteries from the grid. What you have to do is go in here and set a series of settings. You say, my backup reserve is, I want to keep 8% of the charge in the batteries just for emergencies, and I want to be able to run up to 92%. Now, if you adjust that in real time, if you go beyond the state of charge of your battery, it will then start pulling in from the grid. And this is key to building automations, is to understand how this bit works. And there's a couple of other settings in there. If anyone is interested, happy to do a video on how I've got this all set up. But I have my system set up so it will discharge all through the evening. I'm going to take the batteries down to probably about 30% state of charge. And then in the middle of the night, when the Octopus Intelligent Go cheap rate comes in, it will kick in and it will bring the batteries back up to 80%. And then once we get to 80%, they will stop because they'll leave a little bit of capacity then for the following day's solar. We don't get an awful lot during the winter, but it'll let those top up there. Now let's jump to a couple more screenshots. So what you can see here, these are just some of the built-in reports. If you're into this kind of thing, it's so nice to have the reports built in without you having to figure out how to get all the data. You can get reports on energy independence, so how much of your self-generated power are you using as opposed to power from the grid? How much are you importing and exporting from your battery? They're all built in, all really readily accessible. You'll notice there's one here that says activate. This is a predicted generation today. And this is something, for reasons I don't really understand, that EcoFlow want to charge extra for. Solar prediction, to be honest, I haven't come across one that's particularly great. This is no better than others, but this is a chargeable feature from EcoFlow, whereas you can just go on the web to any solar forecast website, type in your postcode and get a solar forecast. So I don't really understand why they're trying to charge for that. Over on this side of the screen, you can see this is my battery state of charge. So you can see here, as we go through the different months of the year. So obviously we installed the system in July, August, September, October. So we're pretty, what we bring in the summer months from solar, we pretty much self-consume all of that. So we were able to bring in 227 kilowatts and we discharged 213 kilowatts. And when you take into account the losses of converting from AC to DC, we pretty much consumed everything that we were able to generate. Here's just a monthly view. So this is obviously October, and we've had some pretty grim, cloudy days recently. So we've only generated 22.58 kilowatt hours this month. Now, this is something that people will say to me, well, that doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, I have my panels in a vertical orientation. They're hanging on my fence. If you were to put the panels on the roof, if you've got outbuildings or if you can actually get onto the roof of your house and you can install them at the standard sort of orientation of about 35 to 40 degrees, you would generate an awful lot more than I do having them hanging in a vertical orientation. So don't take my low figures as a judgment on the system. The system could perform an awful lot better. I just don't have any space left on my roof. I've covered as much of my roof as I possibly can with solar panels. The fence is the only option left available to me. If we jump on a little bit further, there's a couple of reports. It'll take your energy rates, you put in the rates from your provider, and it will tell you how much money it's effectively made you. So in the 3 months over the summer, we've made £55.56. If you divide that by the cost of the units, it would take about 5.5 years to pay for itself. But really 3 months isn't enough to be able to give you an accurate figure, so take that with a pinch of salt. But again, really nice, really simple, easy to understand reports. You can clock in, you can see every single day of the week. Obviously the brighter the color, the brighter the day was. So you can see there we've had some pretty grim days. We had one day we made 1 penny. We had a day where we made 8 pence. So again, a really nice, simple way. If you're not into building your own custom reports, having all of this built in at your fingertips, really, really nice. But there are some things I just don't like. And this is one of them, where you spend a lot of money on a system. I mean, this system, by the time you've bought panels, an expansion battery, you're probably into it for about £1,500. And then to get into the app and find that some features are closed off. Now, these are classed as AI mode premium features. Well, solar forecasting doesn't need AI. But this one really narks me. This is surplus solar control. This is a standard feature of just about every inverter out there. It should not be behind a gate where you have to pay money for it. This basically it allows you to say, once my batteries are full, or when my batteries reach a certain percentage, I want you to export to the grid. That shouldn't be a premium feature. That should be a standard feature. AI energy insights. Well, they give you all of these reports, but apparently there are other reports that are hidden behind a paywall. Dynamic rates. So if you've got something like Agile, you need to pay extra. Again, why discriminate between people who are on a fixed rate versus an Agile rate? I don't understand why all of this is. Maybe it's just EcoFlow want to make a bit more money out of it. So I really don't like this idea of paywalling features. I know why it happens. I know that investors in companies, they all want you to put AI on your product. I know they all want to be able to see an annual recurring revenue, and this is a way to get an annual recurring revenue stream. But it just seems a little bit cheap to me. So there are a few things that I really like about this system. One is the fact that it can sit here in my office. It doesn't require a huge amount of installation. But the main thing is, it's silent. There is no noise coming from this. There are no audible fans. Now, for anyone who's had a power stream system, and certainly a power stream system like mine that's connected up to a couple of Delta Pro batteries, you'll know you couldn't have that inside your house. When the inverters come on in the Delta Pros, they are really noisy. There are some fans there to move a lot of air. These are almost silent. The only time I ever hear any noise from this system is if it clicks over into grid charging and the relay inside obviously connects the grid supply, you do hear a click. That's the only noise I ever hear from them. I do like, as I said before, the gauges on the front. You can turn those off and you can dim the lights, but I do like being able to just glance across and see what state of charge of the battery is. Now, there are a few things that I don't like about them. The first one really is, I'm used to power stations. I'm used to, I have the Delta 3 underneath my desk there. I have the Delta Pros in my garage. And I like the ability to be able to just walk up with a device and plug a USB cable into the front of it and start charging my device. There are no USB ports on this device. So you can't use this like you would use a power station. Now, that's probably a good thing because this is not a power station. This is a home battery solution. So different things I know, but I'm still kind of used to the EcoFlow way of doing things where there are lots of ports, whether they be USBs or 12-volt power supplies that you can plug stuff into. So Yes, it's nice that they're quiet and they sit under the desk and they're very unassuming, but I do miss the USB ports on there. We've already talked about the gating of features behind paywalls. That's another thing that I really don't like about them. But I think if you're looking for a small home battery system, especially one if you are in rental properties that you can move from house to house with you, you can't go far wrong with this. It's a really nice modular, expandable system. And it's really simple. If you were to add another battery onto this, it is literally one cable. You would plug it in and daisy chain the next battery on, and now you'd have another 2 kilowatts. And in fact, I like this system so much that I've just placed an order for another 2 kilowatt battery to add to it. So 2 will become 3 in the very near future. Now, as I say, EcoFlow are not sponsoring this video. EcoFlow are not paying for that battery. That battery has been paid for with my own money. But when it comes, I will show you how easy it is to add on to the system. With that, it just remains for me to say thanks for clicking on the video. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you back here real soon for another video. Take care. Bye-bye.